Joe, I'm going to ask you the same question. What you had your epiphany moment you kind of described, like in that room and everybody's hands are going up saying, I'm afraid of this, starting my own business. What was your perceived obstacle that you're like, you overcome, elevated above, however you want to say it, that led you into doing what you do now?
Okay. There's two things. Okay. The first one is, there's a little story in it's one of the Rich Dad books from Kiyosaki, but once upon a time there's a village that needs water, and there's two entrepreneurs, and the first one, he says, hey, they need water, they'll pay for it. So he gets a couple barrels, barrels and a pole, and manual labor, he goes to the lake and he gets water, and he does this, and he's always exhausted, but he makes a living because people will pay for the water. On the other side of town, there's another entrepreneur, and he says, hey, it's I know the village needs water and they'll pay for it, but I ain't doing that. So what he did is he got together an architect and an engineer and a contractor, and he built a pipeline. And what I realized is all these years I was helping everybody else build their pipeline, but I wasn't tending to my own. And then the other thing that was a real breakthrough for me was another story. I like storytelling. So once, and this is a true story. Once upon a time, holding a think tank for it was all other entrepreneurs, so it was all bright marketing people in the room. And he said, if you had a restaurant and you had one advantage over all of the restaurants, which one would you choose? And so the first person said location, location, location. Okay, good answer. Next one said the best chef, the most delicious food. Okay, good answer. The next one said bargain food. Okay, that's a good answer. The next one said, nice facility, ambience, where people can hang out and spend money. Okay, good answer. The last person said customer service. He said, well, those are all good answers, but if I had an advantage over all of the restaurants, I would want a starving crowd. If you have a starving crowd, location doesn't matter because people will go off the beaten path. If you have a starving crowd, it doesn't matter if you're serving steak or lobster or hot dogs, they're starving. They'll eat whatever you serve them. If you have a starving crowd, it doesn't matter if you have a great location. You can have a street taco stand. And if you have a starving crowd, you don't even have good customer service. You can be rude to them like the soup Nazi on Seinfeld. No soup for you. Well, why do you go here? It's like, the soup's so delicious, I'm starving for it, I crave it. So I identified a starving crowd. I was working, before I was doing employee escape plan, I was working with entrepreneurs that were already existing, and they didn't want help. They didn't have that. They weren't starving for somebody to come in and help them grow their business. But I recognized that there's men and women every day that jump in their car and they cringe at the idea of going to work on Monday morning. They have a soul-sucking job, and they would pay a large amount of money. And I just recognize they're starving. They have a job, which means they pay their bills, which means they probably have credit, which means they can pay me. And so identifying exactly who I was going to work with, that was a huge breakthrough for me.